Well, I've waited for as long as I possibly can to do my first Packers mock draft. Was hoping for the Aaron Rodgers trade to be done by now, but if I keep waiting for that, it'll be the 2024 draft. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. We gonna mock Grossi, and today we are gonna be doing a Green Bay Packers 3-round mock draft. Now, just to give you a little bit of context here, last year I did a total of 3 Packers drafts. I did 2 3-round and I did 1 full. And not to pat myself on the shoulder too hard, but I guessed 5 players that the Packers ultimately drafted in the 2022 NFL draft. Usually I get anywhere between like 2 to 3. Last year I did pretty darn well. This year, we'll see how it goes. And plus, this could literally change tomorrow if the Jets actually make this trade with the Packers. So just take everything with a grain of salt because mock drafts are just for fun. So don't get too upset.
It's for fun.
Now, before we jump into my first pick with the number 15 pick overall, I just wanted to kind of give some insight. I put out a video last week of the top 5 needs in the draft for the Packers, just looking at positions. And to be completely honest with you, if the Packers don't get another first-round pick this year, which it doesn't seem like they're going to, I think the only positions that they'll actually draft in the first round this year could be tackle, could be edge, or could be safety. I just really feel like it's going to be those 3. I know that there's folks out there that are looking at tight end, like a Dalton Kincaid, for example, or you look at Notre Dame and Michael Mayer, but I really think they're not going to use a first-round draft pick on tight end. They typically don't. Instead, I think they'll look at that position day 2. And the other position that is of some popularity, of course, is wide receiver. If they got 2 first-round picks, I could 100% see them doing that, going after like a JSN, for example, or a Zay Flowers. But I think with only 1 pick, they're not going to do that. It's going to be interesting to see what the theme of this year's draft is. Is it going to be a help Jordan Love? Is it going to be going for best player available, which is what they usually do? Is it going to continue to try and build up that defense where they have put a ton of draft capital in over the past few years? We're about to find out, but let's start off with the number 15th pick in the first round. And here I have the Green Bay Packers going with Brian Branch. That's right, they're going safety, baby. And this just makes a lot of sense for me. First, let's look at the positional need. Safety, in my opinion, is the number 1 need for the Green Bay Packers right now. Darnell Savage on his 5th year option, and there are still some questions about him. They have, I think, 6 other safeties on the roster and none that are really turning any heads. This is a position of need. Adrian Amos did not have a great year last year, and he still hasn't re-signed with the team. I don't think the Packers are going to be looking at Adrian Amos to do that. So I think going just from a positional standpoint, the Packers definitely need safety. They need that back end help. And now let's look at the prospect and look at Brian Branch. Brian Branch, I think, is a very safe pick. The guy is a great tackler, had 90 tackles last year. He had 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, 7 passes defended, and he just seems like a great physical football player. Now, are there some things that he can get better with? Absolutely. Could he bulk up a little bit? 100%. But you also could transition him if you wanted to play nickel, or which I think is the bigger need, they can move him to safety. There has been talks about Rasul Douglas potentially being moved to safety, but Matt LaFleur indicated that he did not want to do that, or at least didn't want to start out camp putting Rasul Douglas at safety. I think this fulfills a huge need. I think you get a playmaker, and he's a very safe pick. There are no 100% certainties in the draft, but I think Brian Branch is a really, really good aggressive football player. We need to address safety, and he just fits the bill right now. And just before I move on to the second round pick, I was going to go edge here because there are so many great athletes here, and I think the Packers can definitely use edge, as Rashawn Gary will be returning from injury, but we don't know when, and Preston Smith, is getting a little bit older. So because of that, I think the Packers should and will address edge at some point. It could be their first overall pick, but as I said, right now, they're going to be going with safety to help out that defense in other ways. Then with the 45th overall pick, I had the Green Bay Packers addressing tight end, and I had them going with a guy who has been mocked there over and over and over again. and that is Darnell Washington. Now, when I was sitting down and doing this mock, you also had Sam Laporta that was there from Iowa, and it was really, really tough because they are two different players, and I kind of just went with my gut as to what the Packers would be looking for. Because Sam Laporta has been flying up mock drafts recently. He's arguably one of the best tight ends in a very deep tight end class this year, but the thing that Laporta has over Darnell Washington is that production in the passing game. Last year, 58 catches for 657 yards. He was highly targeted and made the most of it. Now, compare that to Darnell Washington's stats. Last year, 28 receptions for 454 yards and 2 touchdowns. So definitely was not targeted as much and didn't bring in as many receptions. But why am I going with Darnell Washington instead? Well, Darnell Washington is a freak athlete. Guy is 6'7", 264 yards. And while his production wasn't amazing in the passing game, he can get better in it. But the big reason I picked Washington, besides his athletic ability, was he blocks. And he destroyed in the combine. He absolutely was annihilating whenever blocking came up. And I really think that this is going to be the guy who's going to replace Mercedes Lewis, because the Packers have a desperate need for tight end. They have Josiah DeGuara, who I think can do better this year with Jordan Love because they're going to have that connection. And we have Tyler Davis. But other than that, it's pretty bare bones out here. Robert Tonyan, of course, signing with the Bears. And for me, just looking at the kind of guys that LaFleur and Goody like, they emphasize blocking for their wide receivers and their tight ends. You get an athletic monster here who can make a difference in the passing game. And so because of that, I picked Darnell Washington here over Laporta, though I could see them going either way. And then finally, with the third round pick, number 78 overall, this was a tough one. There was just no edge players around here that I thought could make a big difference. Same with tackle. So I did go wide receiver, though I am hesitant to say the Packers are going to draft a wide receiver on day 2. But here I have them going with Cedric Tillman. Sitting at 6'3", 213 pounds, ran a 4.54. 2021, he broke out, had 64 receptions for over 1,000 yards, had 12 touchdowns. He was injured last season, though he did battle back, finish the year with 37 receptions, a little over 400 yards, and 3 TDs. And the reason why I'm going with Cedric Tillman here is similar to Darnell Washington. He is physical. He can block, which is something that the Packers definitely need. They need another blocking wide receiver because Allen Lazard went to New York, and that is something that they're going to be looking to replace. They already have a young wide receiver core in Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and of course, Samori Toure. But I think adding another guy here would make a lot of sense. He's not blowing anybody away with his speed. Like I said, ran a 4.54, but he's a reliable pass catcher, a nice target for a guy like Jordan Love. He kind of fits the mold of what the Packers usually go for, and he's produced against teams like Georgia and Alabama. In Georgia in 2021, he posted 200 yards. So the guy can play against good competition, and I think that the Packers are probably going to target just a reliable pass catcher who can help in the blocking game because that's just their bread and butter. And this will help Jordan Love as guys like Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs continue into their second season and hopefully get even better. I think just shoring it up with another wide receiver is a good idea because they kind of ignored that position for a really long time, and I don't think they'll make that same mistake going forward. So this is what this ultimately looks like, addressing defense early on and then just helping Jordan Love, getting him some big pass catchers, helping with the blocking. And considering I said offensive line is a need for the Packers, you get a guy like Darnell Washington out there who literally could be like another offensive lineman. It's a home run for me. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Before we get out of here, I want to do a big shout out and thank you to some brand new Patreon members. We have Nick O, Robert Cortez, and Jason Cox. A big shout out and thank you to you all. You know, send me at TomGrossiComedy.com or TomGrossiComedy, all social media, see down below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.